and welcome back to another flipped classroom. Uh, Today we're going to kind of extend on what we talked about yesterday about finding independent and dependent variables. We're going to add a little something to it. We tried working it yesterday, but we're going to try adding writing equations into it. So the first page here is going to be a review. It's a two-sider, so it's got a front, it's got a back, and then the last page is going to be kind of your exit ticket. We're going to cover this. You're going to turn this in for a grade. I'm sorry, we're not going to cover it. You're going to turn this thing in for a grade, and we'll have a look at it, and then we'll cover it when I get back. So before we start, you had better make sure you have your packet. Okay, the first page looks like this, second page is this, and the third page is this. You're also going to need a pencil. All right, so we're going to take a different approach to this. We're going to do not necessarily out of the math book, but out of a worksheet. I really like these worksheets. And then these front two worksheets, so the front and the back, is going to be notes for you that you can use on the test. The last page you're going to tear off and turn in when you're done. All right. So this first page is a great tool to help remind you how to do this. So it says the two variables are often related in real-world situations. For example, the number of pizzas relates to the total cost. Let's look at the table below and determine the independent and dependent variable and write an equation that represents a relationship. Okay, so this is stuff we were doing yesterday. So the first step is it says look for a relationship between the variables in the table. So these are your pizzas, these are your costs. Pizzas here, cost here. It says each pizza purchased is $12 because they figured that out because right here it says for one pizza it's going to cost $12. Okay. It says use the relationship to write an equation. So the total cost is C is 12 times the number of pizzas. So our equation would be cost, which is right here, is equal or depends on 12 times however many pizzas. Remember, this is our constant, and in this case, this is our coefficient. So this is our number we know because for one, this is 12. And remember, that's a unit rate, and that's what we want to try to find. We always like our unit rates, okay? Third, decide which is the independent variable and which is the dependent variable. So the cost depends on the number of pizzas. So if I don't add any pizzas, for one pizza, it's still 12. So the independent variable is the number of pizzas. Okay, that's the thing that doesn't rely on others. What relies on the others, the dependent variable, is the cost. Cost depends on the amount of pizzas. Okay, it's no different than anything you ever ordered before in your life. All right. So then the fourth one says verify the relationship using the equation. So you can check this. C equals 12p for each of the given numbers of pizzas. So you could plug in a p right here from your chart, and if it equals 12, you're right. So if we took p right here and we put 1 in for p, 12 times 1 is 12. Did it say 12? It did. Let's try 2. 12 times 2 is 24. C needs to be 24. Ah, it is. So our equation is true. We've set it up correctly. Okay? So here's what I want you to do. I want you, for this one down here, it says follow the process from the above example to write an equation and identify the independent and variables for each problem. Okay? So we're going to do the exact same thing, except instead of it giving it to us, we're going to do it. Remember, we need to write an equation, and then we have to identify the independent and the dependent variables for each of these equations. All right? So this table shows the relationship between the age of a plant in months, so this is our months, M, and height in the plant in H. This makes sense. Over time, what happens to plants? They get bigger, right? They grow if they get the right nutrition. So this makes complete sense to me. So it says write an equation showing the relationship between months and height. So first things first, before we write an equation, we better identify the independent and the dependent. So what depends on what? Well, we just kind of talked about it. Months doesn't depend on the height, right? Months come and go regardless whether the plant grows or not. So months are, right here. Months are our independent variable. So that means if months are our independent variable, that means our dependent variable, what depends on it, is our height. Ooh, sorry. Okay. So now that we have our independent and our dependent variables, we can write our equation. So what depends, remember I told you that what depends is on the, we know we need an equal sign, okay? And so on the, by itself is our dependent variable, the one that it's equal to. So the thing that's equal over here all by itself, our y. So our height is our y, okay? Do we have a constant or something that we can multiply or add or subtract by, okay? So let's look at this. 1 and 4, we could say either you add 3 or you multiply by 4. Let's look, okay? So let's see if that rule applies. 2 plus 3 is not 8, so it must not be addition. What about 2 times 4? 2 times 4 is 8. So we know our rule is times 4, okay? And what are we going to times 4 by? Well, we're going to, everything we times 4 by is going to be our months. Okay? So our independent times 4 will give us our dependent. Let's see if it's true. So we're going to plug in our independent. Remember, this is our independent. This is our dependent. Let's plug it in. So M goes in here. So 1 times 4 is 4. It's true. 2 times 4 is 8. That's true. 3 times 4 is 12. That's true. Okay, and now it wants us to complete the function table. So let's finish it. 4 times 4 is 16. And then we'll finish it. 6 times 4 is 24. So you just did all 3 things that I need you to do today. All 3 things are identify the independent and dependent variable. So you did 1 and 2. And then the third thing is you need to write an equation. And I guess we could say independent and dependent is 1. The second thing is you found the rule by writing an equation. And the third thing is you finished filling in the chart or the function table, whatever you want to call it. Okay? So these are the 3 things I really need you to be able to do by the end of the day. All right? So we've already talked about independent and dependent. We've talked a little bit about writing functions or writing equations. Now we're making sure our equations are true by filling in our charts. Okay? So that's a good way to start. Let's, on the back side here, here's where things are going to get a little different. Okay, I'm not going to make you guys write this on a separate sheet of paper or graph it. So you guys can cross that last piece out. Okay. And while we're crossing things out, let's scroll on down here to the bottom. And it says create a table with 5 examples for the following equations. And you're going to cross it out. All I want you to do is do the chart. I don't want any graphing today. We'll do graphing another day. Okay. All we're focused on today is identifying independent and dependent variables and then writing equations, okay? So we need to create a table. That's the first thing we got to do. Find the independent and dependent variables, and then we have to write an equation. This is 3 things we got to do, right? Okay, so let's get our notes. Let me get my notes all dialed in here. Okay, so we have number 2. Here it is. Each ticket at the Pima County Fair for a carnival ride costs $3. Okay, so let's build our chart first. So we're going to call it tickets. I do a little T chart, it's easiest. And then obviously we're going to talk about cost. So it says for 1 ticket, it costs $3. Okay, so I'm just going to do a couple just to see if I can find a pattern. I like to do 3. Okay, so then the next thing is we got to find a rule. Okay, so when we're adding up tickets, so say you went with your 3 friends, you and your 3 friends, it'd be like tickets times 4, right? So instead of saying ticket plus ticket plus ticket plus ticket, we use multiplication, right? So our rule is times, and instead of 4, we're going to do cost. So the cost of the ticket is 3. Okay? So one ticket is $3. So 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. So we just completed our chart. Okay, that's not bad. All right, so now let's put it into an equation. So obviously, what depends on what? Our cost, so our dependent variable and our independent variable. Our dependent variable is our cost. Because our cost is determined by our tickets. Okay? I mean, it makes sense. Think about it. If you were just paying for yourself, it'd be real cheap. You're paying for a bunch of friends, it's going to get more expensive. So your cost depends on that. So cost is on this side of the equation, and our tickets are on this side. So cost equals tickets times 3, because the cost of the tickets are $3. So you just did all three. You created your table, check. You found your independent and dependent, check. And you wrote an equation, check. Boom. Okay? So here's what I want you to do. I want you guys to pause this, okay? And then I want you to come back. I want you to try 3 on your own and then pause it. And then I want you, and we'll talk about it. And then you're going to try 4 on your own and you're going to pause it and we're going to talk about it, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing for 5 and 6, okay? All right, so pause it now. Try to rock 3 and 4. Remember, you need to do all 3. You need to create a table. You need to identify the dependent and independent, and you need to write an equation. Good luck. Go. Back. So I kind of got us started before you, so we can save some time. I've only got a little bit of time left. So here's how this is going to work. So I already went ahead and identified our independent and dependent variable. It's the same as up top. Cost is always going to be your dependent variable. It's going to depend on the equation because the equation talks about gallons of milk instead of cost of tickets. So our gallons depend on, or our cost depends on how many gallons you buy. So for 1 gallon, it said it is $1.50. So our rule would obviously be whatever times $1.50. So however many gallons you buy times $1.50. So what if I bought 2 gallons? Well, $1.50 times 2 is $3. And 3 times $1.50 is $4.50. Okay? So all 3 things are created by 5. I always start with my independent and dependent. All right, so my cost depends on my gallon. Perfect. All right. What is the cost for 1 gallon? Well, it says it right there. Boom. Create your chart. Figure out your pattern. Our pattern was times $1.50. Boom, and we're good to go. All right. So the last one I want you to do is for number 4. Okay. Go ahead and read the equation. Create a chart. Create a equation, and then identify independent and dependent variables. Go. Hopefully it's getting easier. Here we go. So I'm going to start with my identifying the independent and dependent variables. Independent variable is my aluminum because it's for every one thing. Anytime something's 1, I'm telling you, ding, 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 that's your independent. Because our bats depend on how much aluminum I have. If I have no aluminum, I can't build any bats. It's that simple. So our independent variable is our aluminum. Our dependent, or what depends on our independent, is our bats. Okay, so then I'm going to go back over here to my aluminum. If I have 1 ton of aluminum, it says I can make 800 bats. So what if I had 200 pounds of aluminum? Well, 800 plus 800 is 1600. What if I had 3 tons of aluminum? Well, 800 plus 800 plus 800 is 2,400. All right. So what's our rule? Well, 1 times 800. Okay, 2 times 800 is 1600. 3 times 800 is 240. So I'm not gonna add a bunch, I'm going to multiply a bunch. So B, or our bats, depends on or is equal to how much aluminum I have times 800. Okay, so the last thing I want you to do is I want you to do 5 and 6. It just wants you to create a table, okay, that is for C and for T. Okay, and it says you have to use 5 examples. All right, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All I want you to do is substitute in one for no, I did that backwards. I fixed it. So T is your independent, C is your dependent. So all your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is going to go for your T. All you're going to plug is 1 for T. So 25 times 1 is 25. Okay, 2 times 25 is 50. All right. So good luck. Don't forget to do the last page. Rock and roll. Ask questions. Enjoy. Okay.